All right, guys. We're about to do the unthinkable. And that's to discuss artificial intelligence in any way in 25 minutes. But guess what? AI keeps doing the unthinkable. So we could try that out, right? So let's get to it. New age of AI and inflection point. Strategy, infrastructure, and policy. I'm going to start with Olumide. Possibly because your filler is attractive. How is AI reshaping the various sectors in Nigeria? And what are the key opportunities for startups? I think we start from there.
I'm Dolapo, not Olumide.
Dolapo. Okay. Yeah. So question was for Olumide. Olumide. Yeah. Okay, I'll come again. So you see how it works. Because it was his name, but it was directed at someone else. His senses didn't get it. So I'll come again. How is AI reshaping the various sectors in Nigeria, and what are the opportunities for startups?
Wow, that's I think if we wanted to talk about that for 1 hour, it would not be done. But I think AI, there's a potential for AI in healthcare. There's a potential for AI in finance. There's a potential for AI in security. There's a potential for AI, everywhere. I was telling a story about when I got to Nigeria, I had issues ordering food in Abuja. I didn't even know what I wanted to eat, and I just wrote code and hooked it up to ChatGPT, and it gave me a meal plan for the entire week, and I just sent it to someone who cooked the food and delivered it to me. So that is a potential use case for AI. So in terms of every industry that we can think about, where there is data, where data is being generated, where we need to solve complex problems, AI can be used in all of those industries. And yeah.
That's it. Right. So Olumide would have gone hungry, but for AI. And did the meal plans make sense?
Oh yeah, it was amazing meal plans. To be honest, I mean I had to change a couple of things, but yeah, it worked well, and I think it just shows how much how much the world has come with AI, the potential use cases within Nigeria. Although I think that we're not using enough of it, I feel like we are behind at this point. And that is why I talked about the potential use cases as opposed to the current use cases of AI in Nigeria.
Great. Nkem, you are in the big space, the big tech and innovation space. And I'm sure you do a lot of innovation internally as well as supporting innovative ideas and products around the world. Yeah. The question I have for you is bespoke to Nigeria. How can we strategically position ourselves to be able to leverage AI and become a leader, at least in the region for a start? What are the things that we need to do as a country and the ecosystem, the Nigerian startup and tech and innovation ecosystem? What do we need to do?
Okay, thanks. So, in listening to your question, and as a black sheep, I try to call myself, I don't think, first of all, we should look at it like being a leader in AI. I kind of see AI as what electricity is for us today. That's what AI is going to be in the future. You know that electricity today powers your industries, helps you probably have a better sleep because you put on, your AC, and all that kind of stuff. So in the future, this is what AI is going to be. We would not know that it's on. We just know it helps us function. So everybody's in this, race we call AI. But I kind of tend to look at it from where we are now to where we should be. For example, we still have challenges within our local environment here, where I believe if we understand or if we pick what those challenges are, we can now start asking ourselves, where are we and how can we grow, right? We have infrastructure issues, we have access issues, we have young people today who are learning even without STEM, for example. And if we begin to say, how do we teach children to, or how do we encourage teachers or an education system to begin to train our young people from a STEM perspective, then we're bridging the gap. If we look at the infrastructure space, how can we create more infrastructure? There are places in this country today where you don't have good internet connectivity, for example. How can we make that spread, right? Then in government, where is our government working, for example, on a policy for AI? Do we have a national council for AI? Are we talking about these things? Are we considering how does AI affect our culture and who we are, right? If we're able to do that, it brings us a step, closer into adopting, more of AI. For example, today, there are about 7,000 indigenous languages across the world. And, people like us who are in the global south, our languages struggle into, for example, ChatGPT we talked about today is built on large language models, right? You can't ask, and I did this, I asked ChatGPT in my local language, Igbo, to tell me how to make bitter leaf soup. And I typed my local language. And ChatGPT replied to me something in English, but it put onugbo soup in brackets. Obviously, it's length, picking up things from the internet. But you see, if I could only speak Igbo, ChatGPT is useless to me, right? So we've not been able to, for example, if I ask anybody here, what is parallelogram in your local language? What is stabilizer linkage in your local language? What is a spleen in your local language? You can't answer me. It means that you cannot teach anybody how to be a medical doctor in your local language, right? It means that our languages are not developed. If our languages are not developed, you can't put it in a data set. If you can't put it in a data set, you can't put it in a model. If you can't put it in a model, you can't have a ChatGPT that is going to help you. So you can actually see how far we are or how much closer we need to bridge the gap. Once you're able to, in quote, answer all these questions or solve all these problems, then you can now talk about you want to, probably be a leader as well in AI. So I think, it's bridging all these gaps from maybe an education perspective, bridging the gap from an infrastructure perspective, and also bridging the gap, ensuring that government is involved and we have policies where these discussions are going on around AI. Yeah. From there, we basically move forward.
Great. Thank you, Nkem. I hear you say two things. There's need to contextualize. And in legal language, we have this word autochthony, to make AI autochthonous to the environment where it's being utilized. And then the second thing you talk about is policy, rules, procedure. This is our policy guy. He's a governance and policy specialist and has done a lot of work in the policy space. So I'm going to put you on the spot. And before we do that, we're having a conversation about some policies that were in a particular format. But let's not go there. I see someone laughing. Great. Now, Victor, the issue is very simple. What policy and regulations does Nigeria need to have to be able to have better prospects for AI, but more importantly, foster AI innovation?
Okay, all right, thank you. So a lot of times when I look at policy, I look at it these days, especially when you're looking at it from an intersection between policy and digital, right? AI. I look at it from a place of experimentation. Yeah. So policy, the days of always saying policy needs to play catch-up is over, right? Because at the speed in which AI is moving, you cannot afford to say you still churn out redundant policies. But before we go into, the policy specifics, right? I'll just say, I think of it from like 3 layers. Now, the first layer for me is Nigeria needs to think about policy, AI policy, from a perspective of firstly creating that awareness. Now, that awareness needs to be anchored on you being able to say, how do I ensure that I'm democratizing access and benefits, right, for this technology? how do I ensure that I am communicating the opportunities, the risks that are associated with this technology? And how do I, promote the responsible way of using this technology? So that's the first layer. The second layer for me would be, how do I ensure that I can incentivize open science, open research, right? Because we're talking about the need for policy to foster, AI development, right? And that means that we need to be thinking of the need to create the communities that can actually help you to drive, that open innovation perspective. Now, the reason is this. When you look at ChatGPT and a lot of these large language models, the foundation for how they were bettered is from a place of open science. Even though we know that some of the big techs these days, they've kind of,
Are you subbing us? We should be subbing you.
But the idea is we have those models today because open science was actually allowed, in developed economies. And right now we're kind of enjoying it. So that second layer needs to take place, and it needs to be serious. The days of you saying you just do policy for policy's sake, so everybody just feels happy and you go to sleep. It shouldn't work in that way anymore. Then the third layer is now churning out industry-wide code of conduct. And what I mean by this is, we know that AI actually poses certain risk, and you want to manage this risk. You want to mitigate them. And in doing so, you need to be able to create certain code of conduct in which the industry can imbibe. That's in co-creation, not just you churning it out without the industry participating. Now, this kind of code of conduct needs to be leveraged around things like the measurement and evaluation of AI systems, for instance. That's a different industry entirely.
I'll pause you there, Victor.
Yes.
I'll pause you there, and I'll come back with the closing remarks. But it's because you have hit something on the head, and that's the fulcrum of my next question to you, which has to do with ethical considerations as far as AI is concerned. I have an uncle who says, look, before AI, there was AI. Some of us have been flying before aeroplanes started flying. Teleporting is not new to us. That's in a different realm, different conversation. But I'll come to you, Dolapo. Nigeria, our peculiarities, our differences, our challenges. What infrastructure do we have? And how does infrastructure play a role in the growth of AI?
Wow. So, infrastructure is very, very critical. It's very key to driving either the production or even the adoption, right? The first person said something about connectivity. You can't have AI without connectivity in the first place. And again, I usually say something that Nigeria is not Lagos. Most of the time when we're talking about...
Thank you. Nigeria is not Lagos.
Yes, Nigeria is not Lagos. Most of the time when we're talking about tech, we just make noise, but it's just in Lagos, right? If you move outside of Lagos, if you're moving towards Ilesha, it's off. So we need to foster connectivity, across the span everywhere, right? We have to drive more connectivity. Again, 5G, fantastic, but how far has that gone? So that's one. Another thing, I think the first person also said something about the fact that the basis for, I think you were the one to say, the basis for AI is actually data. That's the first thing, right? And, we need to, to invest in, data centers, and those kind of things. Also talking about infrastructure, you also have to look at regulation, like he has also said. We need to create the right environment, right?
The proper framework.
Yes, the right frameworks, something that will, one of the offsets of AI will be data privacy, and all of that. So we need to begin to, intentionally create those policies, right, that will enable, AI to really thrive, and then have the right kind of adoption. The last infrastructure that I think we need to also consider very importantly is things around education, right? Because, you were saying something very ambitious. I can't remember how you put the question, like, how can we be the leader? Excuse
Yes,
me.
yeah.
We've not even started crawling. You understand? So, because...
But the dream is free.
Well, you can dream all you can. When the time is right, you will wake up, right? So, so we have to intentionally, drive education, right? He started saying something about, from the primary level to the. We have to intentionally, ensure that it's part of our curriculum, and a lot of research, right? There should be a handshake between universities, government, the ecosystem, and that way, we begin to see that we can really advance as we really want.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm even coming to you more or less. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Just wanted to add to what he mentioned about education, which is very important. So about 5 years ago or so, my kids were told to, come to school with their laptops. And everybody was flipping. I was like, these are little kids. What are they coming to with laptops? In fact, the first day, you could see that the laptop was weighing the boy down. I was like, how's he going to carry this stuff and go to school? What's he doing with it? But now, the boy is 10 years old, and you just see him chop, doing his homework, everything on his laptop. In fact, he started using Midjourney recently, and he showed me what he's done on Midjourney. For his age, it may not be wow, fantastic, but you can see that even the prompts of a 10-year-old boy on Midjourney, technology or AI is responding to it. So imagine if you train him some more in the next 5 years or so,
what he will become.
Giving things that are better, right? So, like I said, again, it's being able to, from a national perspective, begin to see how we can encourage our young people. Listen, it has to be a law. When he talked about infrastructure as well, you have the World Economic Forum, I think, that basically says that the more you have internet connectivity in a locality or an area, the GDP of your area goes up. And it goes up because, a young boy or a young girl can have information. From that information, that's when you can crack jokes and somebody can call you to sponsor, their product, and they give you money for it, and you're already self-sufficient, right? So we need to make sure that infrastructure or internet connectivity is actually a fundamental human right.
So you are in big tech, and you can't talk about innovation and growth without the involvement and contribution of big technology, right? What are the plans to enable that growth in terms of international collaboration, in terms of harnessing our raw talents, without the brain drain effect? How do we foster collaborative partnerships with settled jurisdictions, so to speak, that will help harness and retain our talent? One man who I have enormous respect for and who is our leader in the pack, he's sitting somewhere in the room, always says something. He says, look, the next big talent doesn't have to come from Lagos. It should come from one village somewhere. And that's because you have enabled some measure of infrastructural support. There is the political will. What's the role of big technology? What can be done to ensure that tech moves from Lagos to Kwara Namoda to those inner villages where everything seems to be a mirage?
Yeah. So, big tech can do quite a lot. And even today in Nigeria, big tech is doing a whole lot.
But we still see that a lot of it is centered around the urban areas.
Yeah, so it's centered around the urban areas, either because of where we are, right? I think we also need to see how local organizations can work with big tech to take the information or technology or the trainings over there. Big tech is not going to go everywhere. We need to start to see how we can grow our own big tech, when you talk about, collaborations and partnerships with foreign organizations, I ask myself, why don't we collaborate with ourselves first of all? Why don't we begin to research in-house what we have so that when it's big enough, when it's a critical mass, even those organizations outside of the country can come and say, hey, I see what you guys are doing. Let me partner with you. Then your bargaining power is more, right? But what happens now is, we seem to be like suckers to them, and they give you peanuts, as it were. So if we have that internal collaboration, within ourselves, within the organizations, doing research and bringing it out to the fore, which also means that government should support research, government should support policies that, and make people, more encouraged or attracted to do research, then we can have, that collaboration. For example, OpenAI that you hear about today, much of it, is thanks to what Microsoft is doing with those organizations, right? The example I gave you around large language models was a symposium that the Microsoft Africa Research Institute in Kenya basically put together, because we now basically see that people from the global south are going to be late adopters of emerging technologies like AI. So
because of the language barrier.
Correct. The more we have these organizations come together and discuss and even identify where our loopholes are, then it gets better for everybody.
Olumide, challenges. Talk is cheap. Dolapo has said, look, you can dream all you like. You're going to wake up sometime. Challenges. What are the challenges in implementing AI technologies in Nigeria? And how do we address those challenges?
Wow. I think I would backtrack a bit to the collaboration. I feel like collaboration doesn't have to be with big tech, or doesn't have to be with, all of these big companies. For instance, I know that Tejumade, a friend of mine, has been doing AI Saturdays in Lagos, and I've taught there for 2 years now, which is every Saturday we go and teach people about these algorithms, right? So I feel like even with people who are working outside of the country, there is a lot of collaboration that can happen, because we know that some of our teachers right now are not just equipped to teach these things. Large language models is complex technology. The mathematics alone is awesome, it's complex, and it's not really straightforward. So not just collaborating with the big companies, but also collaborating with people who are drivers of this technology in terms of research and engineering. What are the problems we have? We have education. Like I said, we don't have the talent here, a lot of the talent here, to be able to drive AI technology. And we need to build that talent. One of the things I say about AI is that it's a great equalizer. That's what I say. It's the technology that puts small companies at par with big companies. It's the technology that can make your product as awesome as a Google product or Microsoft product. But how many people can build that? How many people can build a face detection pipeline, a speech recognition pipeline, a large language model pipeline? He was talking about Nigerian languages. Right now, we are behind with these languages because we don't have our own homegrown research that is focusing on these things. So first of all, we need to start to work with the talent, which is integrating with the schools, integrating with people abroad, integrating with people who know the technology, and saying, how can we forget about the traditional education system of universities? How can we bring everybody to learn this technology? Because we had the programming era where people were learning on their own. Unfortunately, AI and machine learning is a bit different. There is so much complexity to it that sometimes you just read a paper on it and your head is just like...
Just throws you off.
My God, what is all this? I found myself walking on the road, just trying to process a paper, and I have been in it for a while. So we need to integrate with the education system and try to push that. On another note, right, we need to start to build this infrastructure that we need. And when we talk about infrastructure, I know we focus on internet, but it's really not just internet. It was in 2014, we'd done some work here. We realized that there was diabetes in the rural areas. And a couple of us researchers, we were in Nigeria at the time, we worked on computer vision that you could load on your iPhone, that you could go to a rural area, take a snapshot of the eyes, and your iPhone could say, oh, this is diabetic retinopathy that is happening within this person, and this is how far gone it is without a doctor. Now, that particular technology was given out to someone, I would not say that someone, but it's not in use now, right? So there's even existing technology that we can even leverage, and we can say, okay, we can integrate that with maybe our youth course scheme and say, okay, now corpers can actually do medical diagnosis. So,
if I let you go on, we have come to the painful realization that we can't do the unthinkable. We can't discuss AI in the short time that we have. So, closing remarks. Victor, as you were ending your first remarks, you mentioned ethical reasons and the ethical issues around AI and other issues, right? So I'll come back to you. How do we ensure that, what are the ethical considerations to consider when you talk about AI development? And how do you ensure that those measures are in place, right, to prevent abuse?
Okay. So
in 30 seconds, if that's possible.
You know I won't do that in 30 seconds.
It's not possible, though.
It's not. So you have series of ethical considerations to actually bother on. Some which you are already aware. You have bias. You have the problem around bias. You have problem around autonomy, which has to do with the issues around control problem, which also feeds into things around accountability. You also have things around privacy. Some of these serious privacy infractions that are actually concerned around how you make sense of data, the collection mode, the processing mode, how you go even about minimizing and all of these key, considerations. But the major thing that we need to consider, especially from a policy side, every time I think of it, is about institutional capacity. So we need to rethink how we look at, agencies. So I always like to make comparisons. Yes, maybe the US is not the best comparison. But when you look at the US, they have the NIST, which, frequently churns out where you have NIST risk frameworks. Very important agency of government. So right now, we do not have something that can replicate those level of standards. And it's very important because if we have such agency, well-funded, well-resourced, we start thinking about these problems from a contextual side because we will definitely now understand how our environment, operates with respect to, things around data, developing models, the infrastructure, and for infrastructure, like you mentioned, you have a very classic example of the electricity problem. And AI actually consumes a lot of electricity because of the compute nature. Even though I'm not a big fan of large models, I prefer small models, small problems. But large models, large problems, because you have the compute challenge. So the best way around those kind of things is partnerships, collaborations with startups that are innovating around things like GPU centers, that can connect with, proper data centers and, solve some of, these infrastructural challenges. But let me just keep it at that.
Dolapo,
I hope I use 30 seconds.
In AI world. Dolapo, so everyone has spoken, so I'll just give you the opportunity to make your closing remarks. And I'd like your closing remarks to be centered around the key systems that we need to foster AI growth. It's essentially more or less preaching to the choir because they've said a lot around it, but I'd like you to just wrap up in 25 seconds.
Okay, so I would say that we need to, similar to what they've said, we need to intentionally build ecosystems. I also say we need intentional funding, directly for AI. So there's been a lot.
Big tech is here. Say it louder so you can hear.
Right now what we have, there's a lot of VC funding, fintech. We need to begin to, because if AI is actually what the future is going to be like, we need to begin to intentionally, commit funds to support, people in that space so that we can begin to export, right? And not just be consumers like we've always done, right? So that's
Thank you very much. Guys, we've had this stellar panel discuss AI. Nkem believes that collaboration shouldn't just look at the jurisdictions outside, but collaboration should be a lot internal, right? There should be smaller collaborations so that our bargaining power outside is a bit more enhanced. Victor believes very strongly that you have to also build institutional capacity. It's not enough to want AI. The institutions that are going to run them must have the right capacity. Olumide believes a lot on ensuring consistent educational growth. I think if I get into Olumide's mind, I think our curriculum in our schools, secondary schools and primary schools should have some AI subjects so that we can start harnessing talents early. Dolapo, in his lovely filler, believes that we must begin to look at intentional funding. When he said that Nkem looked the other way, I hope he was trying to affirm that he's just winked at me again. I'm going to put you on the spot. But the truth is intentional funding. I'd like to just leave us with this. AI is the biggest thing that the world has ever seen. If we harness it well, it could make us lovely. If we don't, it will leave us behind. But even more, it will lead to our destruction. And so it's important that as a nation, a developing nation like Nigeria, we harness the potentials by getting it right. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been lovely speaking to you. I hope we made a bit of sense. A round of applause for the panelists. Thank you.